So this is fairly big news. I wanted to cover this, and this article gives a pretty extensive overview of this plan. So I'm gonna, try and read most of it. But Bernie Sanders' $16 trillion climate plan is nothing short of a revolution. This is a pretty comprehensive plan. It's not perfect, obviously. We know where we're at in the game of climate change, but at least somebody is putting something substantial on the table that we could, it's a giant step in the right direction. On Thursday, Bernie Sanders released his long-awaited presidential climate plan, and folks, Bernie is going to Bernie. You can hear his voice and everything as it spits hot fire about prosecuting the fossil fuel industry. Those are the words of the article, not mine. Spitting hot fire, uplifting workers and creating a whole swath of new public works programs and infrastructure. It also calls for 100% renewable energy for transportation and electricity sectors by 2030. So, I mean, that's a big undertaking. Extinction Rebellion is calling for such a thing by 2025, which is actually the more necessary plan. But by 2030, if we actually did that by 2030, that would be nothing short of amazing. While eschewing nuclear power and demilitarizing the world, setting a goal that's somewhere between wildly ambitious and out of reach. And that's exactly what is needed in that regard. It perfectly captures the iconoclastic nature of the Vermont senator himself. I'm glad that this writer is such a fan of Bernie Sanders. I am too. But whether it can be implemented is a big question mark. Former presidential candidate Jay Inslee exited the 2020 race on Wednesday. Sanders' plan goes further than Inslee's plan. Guarantees $16.3 trillion in investments through 2030 to radically reshape American life and address the climate crisis. The plan itself doesn't focus on where the money will come from, though the campaign did say it would come in part from new taxes on the rich. Raising revenue from the plan itself, reduce social safety net costs, and a few other sources. Instead, it focuses on who gets the money. The plan commits trillions of dollars to grants for low and middle income families to do everything from home weatherization to buying a new electric vehicle. It would create a whole new host of publicly owned energy and internet infrastructure. It also uses language like "we will spend, we will provide, and give." I'm not going all but how will we pay for it, given that we need a livable planet, but the language and the recipients themselves are the message. This is a goddamn revolution. And that's right on the money. I'm sorry, the writer is Brian Kahn. Let me give him credit where credit is due. The question right now is not how will we pay for it. But if you want to answer that question, how about just grab a couple $100 billion from the military budget? And I think this is what Sanders is talking about. Among the outlays, Sanders would commit $2.37 trillion to renewable energy and storage. They're also talking about, this is good. Any renewable energy the government generates would be publicly owned. Super important. And Sanders' administration would prioritize selling it to publicly owned utilities and cooperatives at current rates to keep costs down. The campaign estimates that alone would raise $6.4 trillion. That's a lot of money. The plan highlights this under a bullet point about needing to end greed in our energy system. Yes, to that end, the plan also says Sanders would instruct the Department of Justice to go after fossil fuel companies for both civil and criminal penalties. This is also very big. He wants to prosecute fossil fuel companies and their owners and operators. So far, cases winding through the state court systems have largely failed to hold big oil accountable for lying to everyone from the public to shareholders. There may be a federal precedent, though, and especially if Bernie Sanders is president. That's why the corporations are absolutely shaking in their boots about Bernie Sanders being president. They're going to do everything they can to sideswipe him and keep him from winning the nomination, because a presidency, Bernie Sanders' presidency, would mean major, major changes to corporations and the corporate power structure. There's the transportation sector. They're talking, they're talking about giving people grants to buy electric vehicles. Okay, we can debate the wisdom of that, but whatever. It's a plan. This is. Let's see. 2030 goal for 100% clean electricity and 100% EV use will draw the most fire, but it is a goal worth fighting for. So here's another part of this. Is important. The plan explicitly says it will not rely on nuclear power, a move that will resonate with activists, but could also wreak havoc on the electrical grid. Oh no. Everyone needs electricity, safety. Nuclear, but not thinking about the absolute disaster that nuclear power is in case of an extreme weather event, or the fact that most of the plants are leaking or have very large structural problems, and they're all getting old. How about that safety aspect? Says, does nuclear power provides a baseline type of energy, blah, blah, blah. Does that mean that all existing nuclear plants that are still running in 2030 will be shut down? What if they were, or in the process of being shut down? That would be amazing. If this plan had a strong nuclear provision, or look, we're going to shut these plants down, start shutting them down, and transition to something else. Anyways, beyond Democrats holding the House, Sanders would also need the Senate to flip Democrat and abolish the filibuster, something he supports. And then they also talk about him using executive order, which is, actually the positive in the fact that the president has so much more power. Right now it's being used in very negative ways by Trump. But if Bernie Sanders were president, of course, all the powers that be would seek to, immediately to limit those powers. Oh, we've got to cut back on these executive orders, right? If Bernie Sanders were president. But you don't hear anybody talking about that with Trump. Trump's president, and nobody's saying, what's up with all these executive orders? What's up with all this presidential power? Why does he have so much power? They don't talk about that. Same with Obama, same with Bush. Bernie Sanders is the president. They're going to be like, oh, we've got to greatly limit presidential power because this is just a disaster. You can count on that. Anyways, this is amazing. This is pretty great. I'm not, saying this is going to cure climate change or going to save us all from sixth mass extinction. I'm just saying this is, at least somebody's thinking about a step in the right direction that could possibly implement such a plan. Who knows? And we'll see. Lastly, in this video, this is again about Bernie Sanders, and this is a hilarious clip. I'm not going to play it. Oh, maybe I will. Hold on. Where's the part?
They want prices to be, and then because they say contribution allowable.
Okay, this is funny. So Fox News brought this guy on to bash socialism and tell people that, about the dangers of socialism. Then this guy proceeds to tell the host that he donated to Bernie Sanders' campaign with the highest allowable contribution. And that Joe Biden takes money from evil military industrial corporations and fossil fuel corporations and proceeds to tell her what a terrible candidate Joe Biden is. It's hilarious. They don't actually show the interviewer's face, but you can just feel her face turning to jelly while he's saying this. I don't know how this guy did this, but it was, very, very slick sneak attack. Anyways.
Because they set prices, what ends up happening is massive shortages. And what you have now coming up is a humanitarian crisis. But I will say this. I actually made the largest contribution allowable to the campaign of Bernie Sanders. I made a contribution to Bernie Sanders' campaign. Yes. I believe because the Democratic frontrunner right now is unfortunately someone who has taken millions and millions of dollars from many dictatorships: Algeria, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, Saudi Arabia, countries.